How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks. I'm your host, Dylan Backer, and today I'm joined by my brother and co host, Justin Backer. And today we're going to talk about a player we haven't really covered this offseason, and that player is Mitchell Robinson. Year five, I would say, definitely a very impactful season, probably his most impactful season of his career. He's got his first taste of playoff action this past year. He just absolutely dominated Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in that Cavs series. So, I think what we're going to talk about today is just more so if he can take it to another level in year six, if he can, become more impactful, maybe, expand his game a little bit in certain areas that we haven't really seen much of out of him thus far, and just talk about it a little bit and see what we think about him. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic off to my brother Justin and let him kind of open up with some of his thoughts on Mitch. So go for it, man.
Yeah, so in year four, we actually started to kind of see what Mitch was capable of. He played 72 games. He stayed relatively healthy most of the year. I think he had a couple minor injuries here and there throughout the season, but he stayed relatively healthy throughout the season. And, with Julius Randle struggling, we saw some monster games from Mitch in year four, and then he kind of earned himself some money by playing that way. The following season, the Knicks extended him, I believe, 4 years, 64 million, something around along those lines. Me personally at the time, I was kind of a proponent to not pay him that much money. I didn't think he was ever going to get any better. I didn't think he was that impactful. Boy, was I wrong about that, because in year five, you can make the argument he was our third best player, third or fourth best player. Without Mitch, I don't think I don't even think we'd make the playoffs without him, to be honest. I mean, he led the league in offensive rebounds per game, which was huge because, the Knicks weren't a very good shooting team. So Mitch was kind of giving us second chance opportunities basically every time down the floor. Whether it was with a putback, an offensive rebound to a kick out, the Knicks were able to get a lot of shots up because Mitch, his offensive rebounding ability. And obviously we know how good he is in the interior on defense. He's one of the best shot blockers in the NBA, and then, he had that weird little dry spell towards the end of the season where he was kind of complaining about his role on social media, which, I don't really know what he expected. I mean, the Knicks are not going to run plays for you, dude. Like, you have a very limited offensive skill set. I don't really know what you expected. That was kind of strange, but I'm glad it didn't affect his play during the playoffs because, as you said, in round one against the Cavs, I mean, oh my God, he just dominated Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Like, he made them look like children. That was insane. I'd never seen Mitch play like that really ever in my life. That was incredible to watch. And as far as year six goes, I'm interested to see how he can build off that playoff performance. I know he struggled against the Heat, but everyone struggled against the Heat. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm interested to see how he can build off that performance against the Cavs, because that was really his first taste of playoff basketball. When they made the playoffs 2 years ago, he was injured. He didn't even play. So, I'm interested to see how he can build off of that. Like I said over and over again, but yeah, I'm interested to see that. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on some very good points, especially the offensive rebounding and the second chance opportunities. The Knicks also led the league in second chance points, if I'm not mistaken, or were close to that, which, is very much so credited to Mitchell Robinson and just his tenacity on the offensive glass. I mean, without those opportunities, the Knicks would be in offensive ruts left and right. Him being able to get those rebounds to give the Knicks, second chance opportunities to score and kind of, scramble defenses a little bit, that plays a huge role. That was very impactful, and I think we saw a lot of that last season. And of course on the defensive side, like you said, the rim protection, I think he got a little bit better on that side. I think the one thing he still needs to work on is his fouling. He did end up getting into foul trouble quite a bit because he kind of shuffles his feet a little bit too much, but those are some things I feel like he can work on in the offseason and will definitely get better at, because even with that, he was still a phenomenal rim protector, getting lots of blocks, getting a lot of rebounds, just being an absolute force in the paint. And that's what the Knicks really were appreciative of this past season, for a team that needed some sort of big force in the paint, you know what I mean? So with that being said, I mean, I'm looking forward to what he does in year six. Do I expect any massive changes on the offensive side? Not necessarily. He's mostly just been a lob threat type dunker for the most of his career on that side of the ball. And I don't think by now he's going to expand his game into doing post ups or fadeaways or even shooting the ball. I don't expect to see that, even though we see all the offseason workout videos of him hitting step back threes, which makes no sense to me. But, we're not going to see that in NBA action, to say the least. We're not going to be seeing any of that stuff. So offensively, I don't think much is going to be different for him. What I'm encouraged to see, though, is defensively, if he just becomes like an absolute dominant force. Like, he was really dominant this past season, but like dominant enough to where like, he can avoid getting into foul trouble, where he could stay on the floor longer, because there were points in time last season where Isaiah Hartenstein was getting more minutes than Mitch. And that's not necessarily because, that Mitch is a bad player. No, it's because Mitch kept getting into foul trouble and you couldn't really play him down the stretch. The one thing, too, I want to hit on, too, offensively for Mitch that I think he has to definitely work on is his free throw shooting. I think you got to work on the free throw shooting because he's basically a liability from the free throw line. And therefore, you're unable to play him in closing minutes of close games because, like, teams are just going to foul him. We saw Eric Spoelstra do it in the Miami series. And sure, in that one instance, it backfired on Spoelstra. But, we know Mitchell Robinson is a very bad free throw shooter, to say the least. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. He's just a bad free throw shooter. He's a center, so most centers are bad at free throws. I understand that. But at the same time, if you want to play Mitchell Robinson late in games, you got to improve the free throw shooting, man. You got to, because if you're shooting as bad as free throws as he was this past season, he's not going to be able to be played in the last 5 minutes of a close game or something like that. They're just going to play Hartenstein over him. And for Mitch, I think it would be, if he can improve that free throw shooting, then he'll be able to stay on the floor for much longer stretches. If he can avoid getting into foul trouble, same scenario, he'll be able to stay on the floor longer. But other than that, I expect a much more like impactful season in year 6. I really do. I think getting that playoff action was really a big stepping stone for Mitch, because that was like the one thing he hadn't really gotten a taste of just yet in his NBA career. Now that he got a taste of it and actually played pretty well for what it was worth in it. Yes, you said he struggled in the Miami series, but that everybody struggled in the Miami series except Jalen Brunson, so I'm not going to single out Mitch here. But, I think getting that playoff action is going to really like help him out big time. I think it's going to boost his confidence a bit. I think he'll play much better defense. I think he'll play stronger. He'll be more willing to, attack other offensive players like defensively, play stronger. Just, the one thing, man, it's the foul trouble. That's the one thing. That is like the one thing I need him to like fix up on defense, because otherwise he's an absolute force down there. All the blocked shots, the rebounds, just the size. I think he's 7'1" or something like that. So having a 7-footer out there is impactful as it is. It already alters shots from other opposing offensive players, so just limit the fouls. That's like the one thing. If he can limit the fouls, then he can really take a big step forward defensively. And I think he's capable. This may sound like a hot take here, but I think he's capable of being like a defensive player of the year type candidate. Do I think he's someone who can win it? I'm not going to definitively say yes, but I think he can definitely be a candidate for it. He's already, like I said, the shot blocking, the defense, all that stuff, that's going to play huge. I think he can really take that to another level and become like that defensive player of the year type player. I really think he can take that level. I kind of want to hear what you think about that defensive player of the year take, though, because like, we've seen Mitch have great defense, but the foul trouble I think limits him a lot. And I think if he can limit that, then he'll be able to take a bigger step in year 6. That's what I personally think, but I kind of want to hear what you guys say about that.
Yeah, no, you kind of read my mind, actually. We've never discussed this off camera or anything, but I agree with you that Mitch can be a defensive player of the year type of player. You know what I mean? Like, do I think he's going to win it probably in his career? Probably not. I mean, like, come on. But he can definitely enter into like the all NBA defensive, all defense conversation for sure. Like you said, it's the foul trouble mainly that's stopping him because he's not on the floor enough. But when he is on the floor and not getting into foul trouble, we've seen him put up some monster games defensively with, 7 blocks, 8 blocks, 9 blocks, just monster performances. And you go, geez, man. I mean, the guy averages 2 blocks a game for his career. That's what he does, one of the best shot blockers in the NBA. We just saw Jaren Jackson Jr., who's probably the best shot blocker right now. He just won Defensive Player of the Year. We just saw that. So, a player like Mitch can definitely enter the conversation of all defense for sure. He just needs to stay healthy, which he really hasn't done his whole career. He's played 70 games one time, and it was in 21-22. And he needs to stay out of foul trouble. Those two things right there, if he can get that under control, he can definitely enter all defense. I mean, I don't really see what's stopping him. He's a dominant force in the paint. He always has been, really. He saved the Knicks defense a lot. He's a big reason the Knicks defense was as good as it was. Because, okay, Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, all negatives on defense. Those guys get their man blown right by them, and Mitch is standing right there under the basket ready to make the shot difficult, and 95% of the time he does. So, without Mitch, I mean, the Knicks defense would be terrible, to put it quite frankly, So I definitely think his impact is felt, and hopefully in the future, the rest of the league recognizes that and puts him in an all defensive conversation. That would be a pretty cool accomplishment for Mitch. I agree. So yeah, I agree with you on that. That's where I stand.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree also, just the defense, he can really enter that all defense conversation if he just, limits the foul trouble and can stay on the floor. Like you said, he averages 2 blocks a game for his career, which is absolutely insane. Not many guys can even average 2 blocks a game for an entire season, nevertheless for his entire career. I'm pretty sure he had like 2.5 blocks per game in his rookie season. So we saw right there what, how good of a shot blocker he really is. His long wingspan, his size, that's very intimidating for other offensive players when they see that. So if he can stay on the floor, man, like the defense is already going to be as good as it's been. Like you said, when he's not on the floor, the defense is not really that good. We view Mitch as kind of like that defensive anchor, because quite frankly, the Knicks are not the strongest and most imposing defensive team when you look at it all around. Jalen Brunson's a very small guard. Julius Randle's not a fantastic defender. RJ Barrett took a step back defensively. Quentin Grimes is obviously a very good defender, but it's pretty much him and Mitch in that aspect. You have the perimeter defender in Grimes, and then you have the absolute paint beast in Mitch. And having Mitch there is a huge thing. I know some people have said like, oh, and I'm even a culprit of this too, that Mitch clogs the paint offensively and that, he's not an issue when he's out there and stuff like that. I'm a culprit of saying that, but at the same time, I think his defensive presence is just too much to just bypass because of the offensive limitations. And I think that's why he's still a very impactful player. There's been all that talk about, oh, if the Knicks went ahead and got Karl-Anthony Towns because, Karl-Anthony Towns is a big that can space and stuff like that. And while I do think that would improve offensively for the Knicks, I feel like you're taking such a step back defensively that you would end up becoming worse than you would actually think. You know what I mean? And that's why I think Mitchell Robinson is still a very impactful piece and why he's got to stick around for a bit. And why I think if he can just turn up his game a little bit, limit some things that are easily fixable, by the way, fixing the foul trouble and stuff, those are things that you can fix. You know what I mean? If you're going to try to turn a guy who doesn't really do anything offensively and all of a sudden try to make him shoot threes, that's a completely different story. Something as much as limiting foul trouble and just staying on the floor more, those are things you can fix pretty easily and pretty quickly. It can take one off season to fix that. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I think Mitch can definitely take the step forward and just become like that guy that, he's going to be out there in every closing minute. You're not going to worry about having him in foul trouble or being off the floor. Hopefully he can stay healthy too. And I know that's not always something Mitch can control, but just staying healthy, being available, being a presence, being a force. I think that goes a long way for the Knicks. I think he's pretty instrumental in terms of the Knicks' success. Even with the offensive limitations, I think he sets some. I feel like he could set better screens as well. Those are some things he can fix on as well on the offensive side. But they're not like insanely bad things, I guess, if you want to put it that way, to where like you can't put Mitch on the floor at all. No, I think you gotta keep Mitch out there as much as you can, just because, like I said, he's that defensive anchor. When you have good defense, your team will be successful. We've talked about this quite a lot, but there are not many teams out there that have won a championship with a bottom tier defense. You know what I mean? Mitch helps that defense become like a pretty good defense. Do I think it's like the most amazing defense I've ever seen? No, but I do think it's an impactful defense. Something that I think can improve upon. And if the Knicks also add some more pieces down the road, whether it's this offseason or next offseason, of guys like such like wing type players who can score but also defend really well, I feel like that'll make the Knicks defense like really really good. It'll kind of like tip top it, if you will. I think it starts though with just Mitch taking a step forward. I really do. And I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I really am excited to see what Mitch does in year 6. I'm really looking forward to it. I think he can really take a step forward with what he did this season, playing a little bit more. Yes, he was hurt. I know he was hurt for a little bit, but he did play a good chunk of the season and he was healthy for the playoffs. I think that's a huge thing. Being around for the postseason was huge. I mean, we saw how he did to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I mean, Jared Allen literally said the lights were too bright. Mitchell Robinson really got that. I mean, I think that's honestly hilarious considering that was Mitchell Robinson's first ever playoff time as well. So with that being said, I mean, I'm just looking forward to what he does. And pretty much I just want to hear what your kind of final thoughts are on this and what you think Mitchell Robinson could do. Where do you think his ceiling lies next season? Where do you think, what do you think he needs to improve on the most coming into next season out of everything we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I first want to address the Karl Anthony Towns thing. I know a lot of people probably felt some type of way about our last podcast about Karl Anthony Towns and how we were like, no, we don't want him, this to that. Okay, like Karl Anthony Towns obviously would make the team a little bit better offensively. You know what I mean? Like that's just a given. He's a floor spacing big. He's one of the best offensive bigs in the NBA. But like you said, there's things that Mitch does that Karl Anthony Towns does not do that makes the Knicks great. You know what I mean? There's a reason the Knicks were so good at what they were last season. It's because of Mitch. The offensive rebounds was saving us because we weren't a very good shooting team. So now if you take Mitch off the team, now we're just not a great shooting team with no offensive rebounding. So we're not getting second chance opportunities. We're just missing shots left and right, throwing up bricks. You know what I mean? So, and then our defense obviously gets worse because now when Brunson, Randall, or Barrett get blown by, Karl Anthony Towns is the guy waiting. Karl Anthony Towns slimmed down. So, I mean, he's already less imposing than he was. He was never a great defender as it was, but and now he's slimmed down. So he's really not, the same defender at all. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson is not better than Karl Anthony Towns. We know that. That's very obvious, but there's a fit there that I like with Mitchell Robinson. I understand he kind of clogs the paint sometimes on offense. I do understand that, but the Knicks offense was fairly okay this year. It wasn't like, there wasn't times where I was like, oh my God, get Mitch off the floor. He's clogging the paint. We can't do nothing. No, because a lot of times he was saving us. He was getting offensive rebounds, getting putbacks. It's mainly the offensive rebounds. That's the main thing for me, to be honest. It allowed us to get a lot more shots up, But as far as one thing I want Mitch to improve on is the free throw shooting, because when I was watching that Miami series and Spoelstra fouled him on purpose towards the end of the game and put him at the line, I was like, oh my God. I was like, why did no other coach think of that? I was kind of fearing that was going to happen. So, when you shoot 50% or worse from the free throw line, it's hard to play you down the stretch of games for that exact reason. They're fouling you on purpose. Luckily, it backfired. Like you said, Mitch made I think 3 or 4 out of the ones he was intentionally fouled on. I don't know how. I was honestly amazed when that happened, but that's the one thing I wanted to improve on. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to jump to a 70% free throw shooter or something crazy like that, but better than 49%, please, because my God, sometimes okay, when he would get an offensive rebound, teams would just foul him. It's basically a turnover because he's not making the free throws. So it's basically a turnover, So if he just improves on the free throw shooting, it maybe jumps up to 60%, 65%, something low, but not as low as where he is. I'm not expecting him to jump to 70, 80%. But if you want to play more minutes, you got to hit the free throws. I think part of the reason he didn't play so many minutes was because of the free throws, like you said. Hartenstein was a lot more reliable in that department, and it just didn't really make sense to have Mitch out there closing the game in a close game when teams could just foul him and basically it's a turnover. He turned the ball over. He's not hitting the free throws, So that's the one thing I want him to improve on, really. I don't think he's going to expand his offensive game to shooting the ball or posting up. I mean, this is year 5. Well, he's played 5 seasons now. This is about to be year 6. I'm not expecting that type of leap. That would just be that would be amazing. That would be astonishing, and I also don't want it to take away from what he is good at, because what he is good at is valuable. So I don't want him to focus on, posting up or trying to beat guys off the dribble. I don't want him to focus on stuff like that. It's just going to take away from what he's already good at and what makes him valuable. So that's kind of my final thoughts on it, Yeah, you can go ahead and share your final thoughts now. I'm going to throw the mic over to you.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on some really good points. I think defensively we kind of know where Mitch is and what he is, and that we don't need to see anything drastically improve on that side other than the foul trouble, like I mentioned. I think that's the one thing on defense that he can work on, but that's also something that's not super detrimental. It's something that it's a pretty easy fix, honestly. It's just, work on the footwork a little bit, and that's pretty much it right there, because defensively he's already a monster, with the blocks and just the imposing size and a wingspan, all that. He's already imposing on that side, so I don't need to see too much anything change on that other than the fouls. Of course, the free throw shooting though is huge. Offensively, we don't need, like you said, we don't really need him to be doing post ups or mid ranges or anything. Because Mitch is, quite frankly, he's surrounded by a bunch of guys that can create their own shots. Jalen Brunson can create his own shot. Quentin Grimes is a catch and shoot guy, but we've also seen him beat guys off the dribble. RJ Barrett's a shot creator and a slasher. Julius Randle, of course, is one of the better shot creating power forwards in the entire NBA. He's surrounded by a bunch of guys that can create their own offense and kind of, mesh together a little bit. So we don't need Mitch to really step in and become like a 3-point shooter or a mid-range shooter, a post-up guy. Yeah, that would be nice if he had the capability to do that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that we need him to do when he's surrounded by a bunch of guys that can create offense already as it is. The clogging the paint issue, I feel like that can get solved on its own if Mitch can become a reliable free throw shooter, to be honest. I really do, because then teams won't be so, willing to just foul on offensive rebounds or on guys driving to the paint or something like that. So I think that's a big stepping stone, really. And like you said, I don't need Mitch to become like an 80% free throw shooter. We know that's not realistic, but just better than 49 or 45%, whatever the number was. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but whatever that number was, it was not a good figure at all. It was one of the worst in the NBA. So if he can improve in that department, I think that'll make a huge difference, really, just overall. I feel like it'll add the Knicks some extra points too, because Mitch gets all those rebounds and then teams foul him as a result of him being such a force down there. So the Knicks can get some extra points just alone by that, by hitting some more free throws, because he's going to get fouled quite a bit. He's such a force down there. So that's pretty much all I got to say about this. We would love to hear what you guys think about Mitchell Robinson in the comments section. We'd love to hear if you guys think he's going to take a massive step forward in year 6, if he's going to kind of just stay what he was in year 5, or if he'll even take a step back. If you're not very high on Mitch, we would love to hear it. We would love to, kind of interact with you guys and see what you guys think about this player that we have here. But overall, I think he's going to be an impactful piece in year 6, and I'm really looking forward to it. But with that being said, make sure you guys follow Fireside Knicks on all of our platforms. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on Threads now, and we're also, of course, on this YouTube page as well. The audio versions of these podcasts can be on Spotify and Apple Music. So if you'd rather listen to us talk about this while driving or something, you can do that as well. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. Just be on the lookout for our next Fireside Knicks episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.